Guys, I'm Alex with a new review here, and I'll be talking to you today about Spider-Man Homecoming. Is it fun? Is it amazing? If you keep watching, you'll find out soon. So just a heads up, in this video there's going to be a few spoilers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep them until the end, just so that anyone who doesn't want the film spoiled for them can go away, watch the film and then come back and watch the end of it later. So if you stick around to the end, there'll be a couple of spoilers, just forewarning you, just so you guys are aware, okay? Now, for those of you who are bored of seeing the origin story of a superhero, this is not one of those kind of films. This film is incredible. It skips all the origin stuff. You don't have to bother knowing about Uncle Ben dying, anything like that. It's all pre-done. We all know there have been so many adaptations and recreations of this character Spider-Man. Everyone by now knows who he is and how he got his powers. Instead focuses on Peter Parker trying to juggle being just a standard teenager at school in America, as well as being a superhero that is Spider-Man. And as per usual, has a fuck ton of Easter eggs for all the Marvel superheroes. So keep an eye out for them, guys. One of the first things I'm going to talk about was that the story for this film is sort of a coming of age story, really, because you follow Spider-Man and Peter Parker using Iron Man as sort of his substitute dad, and you've got Aunt May as a substitute mum. I think it's quite good they don't tend to mention his parents in this film because they're not really relevant in the comics, so they're not really relevant in this one. He's constantly looking up to Tony Stark and he wants to be just like him, which, as we all know, really isn't a good idea because Tony Stark can be a bit of a... While I'm on the topic of Tony Stark, I'm just going to say is that they handle him brilliantly in this. This isn't an Iron Man film. This is definitely a Spider-Man film with Iron Man bits in it. It's that they handle it very well, and it doesn't just focus on him. He is very much a mentor role in this, which is very unusual, I've got to say, for seeing Iron Man as a mentor in this film. But they handled it really, really well. And in doing so, like, he sort of has to let Spider-Man make his own mistakes in order to learn from those mistakes, because I'm sure, as we all know, part of growing up is doing that. You've got to learn yourself in order to become a better person, which I think they do beautifully. And it's very evident that Peter Parker is just like any one of us was when we were a young teenager. He just wants to grow up really quickly, and he's really keen to be an adult and to be treated as such. Kind of hard to treat someone seriously when they're running about on a red and blue leotard all the time. Now I'm going to be moving into some things which are sort of the spoiler territory of the film, so if you don't want to see or hear anything that might potentially ruin the film, I'd stop now and sort of skip towards the end, and just to see my quick recap of what I think of the film. I'm going to move on to something that I'm going to call the sort of bullshit section of what this is going to be. That's what I think is when, in the moments of the films, they have to use them in order to drive the script along and for it to make sense, but in reality, it's bullshit, really. Firstly, keeping up with some of the bullshit moments in this film, I'm going to talk about the Flash. Not the Flash, he's called Flash. He's meant to be the bully in this film, and I appreciate that Marvel have tried to go a different direction and have him as a rich bully instead of being your standard jock. But unfortunately in this film, I don't think it works too well. The main reason for this is because he's not a good bully. He doesn't... If that was me, I just wouldn't care for some of the things that he has to say. I mean, the kid's best line to bully Peter Parker is simply to call him Penis Parker. That's it. Nothing else. That's the best that he has. I mean, when I went to school, my friends would call me funny names all the time. At least I thought they were my friends. The final shit thing that I'm going to comment on in this video is simply going to be at the end. The main thing that the Vulture is looking for is in the Avengers plane, let's call it. As they're leaving the Avengers tower, Happy loading up the plane for them, and as he does so, he lists off a couple of things that are in there. For example, Captain America's new prototype shield, the Hulkbuster armour, Thor's new belt, just to name a few. What the f***? Who came up with the idea that all of these items grouped together in a small confined metallic cylinder, then off to go and drop them at the New Avengers tower or New Avengers building was a clever idea? What? That's just immoral. But Alex, I'm sure he has some form of protection set up. I mean, he might have some guards in the plane. Or a little protocol that if the plane gets interfered with, Iron Man suits fly to save the day. But to those ideas, I say no. Because billionaire playboy philanthropist Tony Stark doesn't agree with wasting his own time. F you, Tony Stark. F you, Tony Stark. As I'm sure you know who the main cast of this film is. You've got Tom Holland as Spider-Man, but someone I kind of want to focus on at the minute is Michael Keaton as the Vulture. Now, Keaton is something that I think has made this film incredible. This film, definitely, the villain makes the film, I believe. Definitely, Keaton steals his scenes, every single one that he's in. The reason why I'd say this is because Keaton's character, without spoiling too much, you actually sympathise with him. His character is part of the clean-up crew that basically after the Avengers have their big fights and they leave cities in destruction and rubble, he comes along with his group and they try to clear it up. And it's pretty evident after the beginning of the film that because the government cut his funding and he can't do it anymore, that you actually sympathise with him and you kind of agree as to why he's doing this, because it's quite good that it blurs the lines. I think that does it perfectly with a villain, because as I say, you then tend to sort of sympathise with them and you put yourself in their shoes. But yeah, at some points he's not necessarily seen as the bad guy, he's more a victim of his circumstance. That's right, I go to university and I use big words. Fans will be happy to hear you do get to see the Iron Spider suit, which is very cool, and they work it in very well, and I do appreciate the fact that Peter Parker actually turns the suit down, because I think if he was to use it and get it straight away, it would ruin the film, and I'm sure they're setting this up for Infinity Wars. Another scene that I'm sure a lot of fans will be happy to hear is the scene where, towards the end, after another encounter that Spider-Man's had with the Vulture, he's trapped and crushed beneath a load of rubble, and he's summoning all his strength, and he's growing up finally, and somehow that gives him some newfound strength, and he's pushing as hard as he can, and he lifts up the rubble beneath him, and this mirrors the iconic scene in the comic books of Spider-Man lifting the rubble after a triumphant defeat, and he's struggling, he manages to push all this rubble off to go and save the day, which, as I'm sure you'll all know, is from a certain comic book that I don't know and haven't read, and I don't know the page number. I've just seen a couple of pictures of it online, so if in doubt, Google it yourself. I think that's about all I've got to say for the new Spider-Man film. So the question is Spider-Man Homecoming amazing? And the answer I've got to give is, hell yes it is. It was way better than I thought it was going to be. Definitely met the expectations that I had for it, and Marvel pulled off yet another cracking film. And that's about it. So as always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I've been Alex, and you've been amazing. Speak to you soon.